Welcome to the Yacht Broker Masterclass free webinar. So happy to have you along here. This particular week, I'm coming to you from Fort Lauderdale. It's just been the Fort Lauderdale International Boat Show. That was an absolute blast. And if any of you have never been there and you become yacht brokers in the future, I would highly recommend that you go to that boat show. It's the biggest in the world. Fantastic for networking, fantastic for seeing yachts that are available on the market. Just a great event. As always, I always appreciate it in these webinars if you can leave some comments in the live chat. It's always reassuring to know that you can hear me, because I'm not a great truster of technology, and it always worries me that I could be rabbiting on here for an hour and you can't hear what I'm saying. So any acknowledgement that you're there on the live chat is always very much appreciated. Also, as we go along, please feel free to ask any questions that you have, even if they're off topic, even if they're not particularly to do with this webinar. I'm here to answer your questions, so please do feel free to ask anything that you want. Your favorite developer says I'm here. That's great. Thank you. I now know that the live chat is working, because in a different live stream that I did a little bit of time ago, which was on a different topic, the chat wasn't working and it became quite a disaster. So then I lost confidence in the live chat. Patrick Dakash says, hi all. Thank you very much for participating, Patrick. So let's go on with it. The free webinar for the Yacht Broker Masterclass. And I have to say, Yacht Brokerage is a fantastic business to be in for many different reasons. The amount of freedom that it gives you is absolutely incredible. And maybe for you, like me, freedom is an incredibly important thing. If you're on this free webinar, probably you don't enjoy businesses where you have to clock in and clock out. You probably don't enjoy businesses where your boss wants to know what you're doing all the time and you have to constantly justify your actions. With Yacht Brokerage, there is a huge amount of freedom. Quickly say hi to Samuel. Great to have you here with us, Samuel. Samuel's also a friend of mine, so I appreciate your support here. The freedom of Yacht Brokerage is incredible. The vast majority of brokers are independent contractors. I would certainly say that every successful yacht broker is an independent contractor, because they get paid more by being independent. And that independence is a huge value to have. If I want to travel somewhere business class or first class, if I want to stay in the best hotel, I don't have a boss saying to me, you shouldn't have spent that much money, because I decide for myself how much money to spend. Conversely, if times are difficult and I need to tighten the belt a little bit, I'm free to go economy class or to stay somewhere that's not so expensive, because I have that freedom. And freedom is one of the biggest attractions of the yacht brokerage profession. Freedom to make your own mistakes, make your own right decisions, to benefit or not benefit according to the decisions that you make. I always used to feel, when I worked for a company, that if I make a good decision and it's profitable to the company, I should be rewarded for that. But if I make a bad decision, then there should be some consequence for that too. As an independent yacht broker, you live by the consequences of your actions. And that can be not making money if you make bad decisions, or making a substantial amount of money. And let's face it, one of the big attractions of the yacht brokerage industry is that it can be very financially rewarding indeed. One of the first sales jobs that I ever had was well before I was involved in yachting, was selling gift items. There used to be a product, and they called it Grow Your Own Man. And it was a little round ball made out of sawdust, made into the shape of a man's head, with a nose, two little eyes, and they put grass seed over the top of it. So you'd put this sawdust underwater and the grass would grow like hair. You'd put the thing in a flower pot, you'd give it a Mohican cut or whatever haircut that you wanted to, and it was just a bit of fun. And I used to make, I think it was about $2.20 on each one that I sold. $2.20 on one sale. Now, to be fair, I had flower shops that would order 100 a time off of me, or 10 a time. So you could make some profit on it. But when I became involved in the yachting industry and I saw salespeople making up to $1 million, with a single sale, I have to say that did kind of focus my attention on this being a very, very interesting industry to be involved with, certainly very financially rewarding. On top of that, it's just a fascinating business to be involved with. You get to meet people who are amongst the wealthiest people in the world. And if there's one thing that they all love to talk about, it's their super yacht. I found that I could telephone clients without any pre-warning at all. And even if they were in a business meeting, very often they'd stop the business meeting to speak to me, not because they loved me particularly, but because they love their yacht and they love to talk about super yachts. So the people that you meet who are owning the yachts are fascinating. They often have incredible stories behind them. They're usually very generous in their information that they give to you because they enjoy talking about their success. They enjoy talking about their yachts. The yacht captains that you meet usually have amazing stories behind them. The interactions that go on between shipyards, yacht owners, captains are entertaining, to say the least. The most surprising things happen. So you have a business here that is financially extremely rewarding, gives you almost total freedom of activity, and it's just a fascinating business to be in. And as I started to do these free webinars, the big question that people seem to ask is, but how do I even get into the business in the first place? Now, at the end of this webinar, which will last approximately 1 hour, maybe a little less, maybe a few minutes more, but at the end of this webinar, I'm going to tell you about a new partnership that I've entered into that will make it a lot easier for you to get into the yacht brokerage industry. Certainly a lot easier for you than it ever was for me or for many of my colleagues who are also yacht brokers. So I'll be telling you about that partnership a little bit later. But first, for those of you who don't know me, I just wanted to tell you how I got into the industry, because you hear of a lot of wealthy individuals whose children become yacht brokers. Their father has a yacht, their father's friend has a yacht. So it's kind of reasonably easy for them then to sell yachts to those acquaintances. You also hear of a lot of yacht captains who've been 10, 15 years working as crew or as captains and have built up their knowledge base and their contacts, and then they become a yacht broker. I didn't do any of those things. I actually come from a city in England called Wolverhampton. And if any of you know the geography of England, you'll know that Wolverhampton, A, couldn't be any further from the sea. It's literally right in the middle. And B, is not exactly a wealthy part of the United Kingdom. If any of you have watched the Netflix series Peaky Blinders, then that's quite close to Wolverhampton, very close, in fact, to Wolverhampton, an industrial area. And as I was growing up, all that I knew was that I wanted to do something more exciting with my life, do some business. And so, long story short, I moved to London. I met an incredibly beautiful Italian girl there. And when she moved back to Italy, I pursued her. I quite literally pursued her. I moved to Italy too. And actually, that's where I was selling those little grass heads. But at the same time, I learned of a local businessman who wanted English lessons. So I thought, well, I can teach him English while I'm there. The businessman was called Norberto Ferretti. And those of you who are on this webinar who know a little about yachts will probably recognize that name, Ferretti. Ferretti Yachts at the time were a shipyard building luxury yachts. They went on to become one of the largest yacht building groups in the world. But when I saw what Norberto Ferretti was doing, building these luxury yachts, it absolutely blew my mind. And I worked hard to put all of my energy into learning about the yachts, meeting the people who were buying them, meeting the captains, learning the industry, because I wanted to be a part of it. As Ferretti then grew and became a group of companies, I was moved into the sales and marketing department, which, to be fair, was more because of my knowledge of English than because of any particular sales ability that I'd shown to Ferretti. But from there, I got more and more responsibility. I learned more and more about yachts, and I met more and more people in the industry until I was able to eventually become a yacht broker. In my first job as a yacht broker, I was truly disappointed by the lack of any help that I had at all. Basically, I was just told, you've got your contacts, get on with it. And I did try to get on with it. There was no sharing of knowledge. There was no efforts to really help me in this new business. I was just dropped into the deep end and just basically learned from making my own mistakes. So that 20 years later now, almost 20 years later, led me to wanting to help people who are getting into the yacht brokerage industry. It wanted me to help people who'd got that same entrepreneurial spirit, that same passion, that same energy, and transform that into becoming a knowledgeable, credible, responsible yacht broker. It led me to desire to give everybody all of the necessary tools to take energy and passion and excitement and actually put them to use to make some really good money and to have a really good lifestyle as a yacht broker. Now, not all of those tools are academic, let's say. Some are. There are certain things that academically you need to know. You need to have a good grasp of contracts, for example. You need to have a good grasp of the ownership structure of a yacht. But it's not all academic. In the nearly 30 years that I've been in the industry, I've seen people do some very, very clever things to be able to sell yachts. I've also seen people make some very, very stupid mistakes that I've also learned from. And so I wanted to put together a course that would both show the common mistakes that people make and also the good things that people do on a practical level to become a successful yacht broker. Yacht brokerage is a well-trodden path. All that you need is somebody ahead of you, a machete, to kind of knock down a few of the problems in order to be able to walk along that well-trodden path. Just as a matter of curiosity, if any of you want to leave a comment, I'm just wondering what you think the biggest skill that a yacht broker needs is. What do you think the most important skill set is for a yacht broker? Do you think it's being a salesman? Do you think it's having a good knowledge of the markets? Do you think it's having a good knowledge of yachts themselves and how they run? What do you think the most important skill set is? Interesting that Hendrik Sprick has come straight back saying empathy. And I would have to agree that that's a hugely important skill set to have for yacht brokers. Patrick Takash says, find out what the customer really wants. And actually, that's very true too. Let's say that's the ability to listen. A lot of people have the misconception that a yacht broker should be a salesman. They should be able to have the patter and what we call in England the gift of the gab, just be able to rattle on, make people laugh, be engaging. And without a doubt, that's not a bad skill set to have. But salesmanship is absolutely not essential to being a yacht broker. Femi's account says listening skill. And actually, it's almost like you've done that module in the masterclass, because listening, I talk a lot about the importance of listening in the masterclass. It's hugely important. You think about salespeople and you think of, for example, a used car salesman, and you think that might be a transferable skill. The thing is that most people need a car. And so when you go to a car showroom, you're going for something that you actually quite need in any case. So for a salesman to rattle on about all the good things to push you into the decision is quite different to what a yacht broker needs. Or you might think of a salesperson in real estate. And for sure, being a real estate agent is a good transferable skill to have. But still, people need a house to live in. Or they're buying an extra property as an investment. Well, a yacht, under no circumstances, is a need. And very, very rarely is a good investment, usually quite the opposite. And so the skill set that you need as a yacht broker is very different to that of a car salesman or of a real estate agency. I'm really pleased to see that a couple of you have said the importance of listening. It really is an important skill set. But in the masterclass, I also delve into what makes the most successful yacht brokers so successful. And a lot of it is the ability to be a diplomat. Hendrik says the skill to think like an owner. That's definitely a very, very useful thing as well for many, many reasons. But diplomacy is one of the biggest skill sets that you're going to need. And I say this because I don't want people to feel that they have to be amazing salespeople to be brokers. You really, really don't. I know some successful brokers who are actually quite socially awkward, but what they have is that ability to bring people together, the ability to find solutions to problems. And the masterclass itself goes into detail on a lot of what those problems can be, and into how you need to know the right people and find the right solution to just smooth out the sale. One successful broker called it facilitating the sale, allowing the sale to happen in spite of all of the things that might prevent it from happening. Another question that I want to ask you, just to get an idea of the level of knowledge of the people on this webinar, are you aware of the two big yacht brokerage agencies, the two big yacht broker organizations? I'll give you a moment to think about that. There are two yacht brokerage organizations that actually, among other things, produce the most commonly used contracts that are used for sales. Quick moment to see if anybody jumps on that. I can tell you that Samuel said Northrop & Johnson. Thanks, Samuel. Northrop & Johnson is a brokerage, though. Candace Balchi, quite right, MEBA. MEBA is one of them. ISS, yeah, the International Super Yacht Society is a big organization. It's not, as far as I know, they don't produce contracts. But MEBA and EBA are the two big organizations. EBA is IYBA, the International Yacht Broker Association. MEBA is the Mediterranean Yacht Brokers Association, but they've since renamed themselves, I think, the Worldwide Yacht Brokers Association. They both produce contracts and a structure, let's say, for yacht brokers to function within. And in the Yacht Broker Masterclass, I go into some details on what they do and what those contracts are. Really to show that behind the financial benefits of being a yacht broker, behind the freedom that you have, behind the fascinating lifestyle, as with everything, there's hard work. You have to be prepared to put the work in order to get the benefits out. You have to be familiar with certain things. I remember somebody saying to me once that the legal industry and the medical industry have hundreds of years of experience, but as they've developed as industries, people have produced books, they've made courses, they've allowed people to learn from their career. And the shocking thing with yacht brokerage is that up until now, nobody's really done that. Yacht brokerage itself has been going for nearly 100 years, and there's so much experience out there. There's so much knowledge out there now. It was necessary for somebody to collate it all and to put it into one single masterclass course that people could benefit from. When I became a yacht broker, there wasn't any help at all. And I'm not saying that the masterclass is essential to become a yacht broker. It's absolutely not. It's really not. I didn't have it, and none of my colleagues had it. We all became yacht brokers and successful yacht brokers in spite of that. However, now there is something out there which helps you to learn from other people's mistakes, which helps you to accelerate the time period to become successful and start making money a lot earlier. To make it compact and really useful, and actually, before I tell you about this, I just want to address a couple of the comments here. Patrick Dakash says, we wanted to become members of MEBA, but they didn't take us. I just want to answer that because it's a common problem. It is. you don't have to be, you really need to be a member of MEBA, which is the Mediterranean Yacht Brokers Association, if you want to charter yachts. And MEBA really started off more as a platform for charter brokers than for sales brokers. The reason they're useful to have for charter is because they own, as you probably know, Patrick, they own something called Yachtfolio. Now, Yachtfolio is the ultimate database on yachts that are for charter. It tells you who the crew are with the profiles of the crew, where the yacht is, when it's available, who you need to talk to. And if you don't have access to Yachtfolio, it's extremely difficult to charter yachts. And so what MEBA does, rightly or wrongly, is they want you to have so many recommendations from people who you've done charter business with before they allow you to become a member. The problem is the chicken and egg problem, that how are you ever going to get those recommendations if you can't charter a yacht in the first place? People do it. I know people who have done it, but it's very, very tough. The Yacht Broker Masterclass is more for people who want to do sales, and you absolutely don't have to be a member of MEBA to be a sales broker. You really don't. I'm not a member of MEBA. The company I'm associated with, Northrop & Johnson, is a MEBA member, so I benefit from that. But for sales of yachts, Patrick, you'll be pleased to know you don't need to be a member of MEBA at all to sell yachts, or of EBA, or of EBA either. Now, the masterclass itself has 9 modules. The first one is called The Business of Brokerage, because I wanted to immediately knock down the misconceptions of a yacht broker being some sort of sleazy salesman and explain to you what all of the skill sets required are. Not just based on my own experience, but based on knowing several of the top yacht brokers in the world, people who are making millions and millions in commission consistently every single year. I wanted to explain as well what your expectations should be on money, how much you really can make, how the money is allotted, and what's a reasonable amount to expect. I said at the beginning of the webinar, I saw people making $1 million commissions plus, and that still happens on a regular basis. But at the same time, it's not a daily occurrence. It's not even a yearly occurrence for many yacht brokers. So I wanted to explain in that first module exactly what the business is all about, and to set realistic expectations and to let people know what the skill sets are that they're going to need. We then go into a module about the MEBA contract, the Mediterranean Yacht Brokers Association contract. Now, you don't need to be a MEBA member to use the MEBA contract. And because it's a contractual discussion, I did want to get that module endorsed by a marine law firm. So I went to HFW. HFW are one of the biggest marine law firms in the world, and they spent hours with me going through every single line on that contract. Now, when you become a yacht broker, from time to time, a law firm will visit you to go through that contract with you. However, that might happen once a year, and if you're not there that day, you've kind of missed it. It might even be just every other year, or they might not visit your yacht brokerage at all. So I wanted to give students of the course the benefit of a line-by-line analysis of what is one of the most commonly used purchase contracts in the world. That's a really valuable module. Module 3 is the new build contract. And there I went to Hill Dickinson, who are another massive law firm and who I personally have dealt with for new build contracts. The new build contract is one of the most exciting yacht contracts that a yacht broker can enter into. When you're involved with a buyer who's buying a brand new yacht and going through the construction process from the signing of the contract to the delivery of the vessel, it's hugely important from the experiential value. But you do need to know the basics of the contract, what to look out for. So that's endorsed by Hill Dickinson. I thought then it would be time to take a break from the contractual side of things. So module 4 is about representing a seller, because you only ever represent one of 2 people. It's either a buyer or a seller, occasionally both, you'll be dealing with. And I wanted to deal with the buying, representing a seller first, because that's all you need to get into the business. If you have one person who lets you represent their yacht for sale, you're in, and your career should, I wouldn't say necessarily take off, but it should become progressively easier from there on. Once you have a seller, buyers will come because you'll attract inquiries, and every inquiry you get from a qualified individual is a potential future client for you and a potential buyer. So we do a module on representing a seller as module number 4. Then module number 5 is representing a buyer, because hopefully after your seller, you'll have some buyers arrive, and you need to know how to represent a buyer, what to do to be effective in finding somebody a yacht that they want to buy. The following module goes into the EBA contract. So that's more commonly used in the United States. I wouldn't say it's a hard and fast rule. Sometimes the EBA contract is used in the Med as well, but generally speaking, it's the most popular contract. And I had that endorsed by Michael Moore. For those of you on this webinar who don't know Michael, he's probably the most successful and well-known marine lawyer in the United States. He's done some huge contracts, and he's one of those go-to people that people go to for their legal requirements. And so I wanted him to take me through that contract line by line, and it's a really valuable module in the course. The following module, what you need to know about owning a yacht. Now, one thing that I make very clear all the way through the masterclass is that, in my opinion, everybody should do what they're trained to do. So never give legal advice to a client. Put them in touch with a marine lawyer. Never, ever give advice on ownership structures to your clients, because that can really come back and bite you in the behind if you get it wrong. But put them in contact with a firm that specializes in ownership structures and tax advice, in particularly for your clients. That said, you do need to know what the basics are of owning a yacht. So that's a really valuable module. But my favorite module on the course is number 8, which I've simply called It's a Relationships Business. And it really is. To be a good yacht broker, you have to be good with relationships, good with people, certainly good with owners, buyers, and sellers, but good relationships with lots of other industry players as well. And I go into some depth on this. It's not a flowery, lovey-dovey, I think in America they say kumbaya around the campfire. It's not that kind of a module at all. It talks a lot about the dangers of overstepping a limit, the dangers of not having a good relationship with certain key players who are going to really help you to sell the yachts. It's a very, very thorough, engaging, and very useful module in the course. And then the final module, which actually we just uploaded today, because the course only started 9 weeks ago, so now people are finally on their 9th module, is called Be Money Smart and Be Successful. And that's really the benefit of not just my own experience, but also other brokers that I've seen. Once you start to be successful, the pitfalls you need to avoid and the practices you need to develop in order to continue to be successful. So that's really what the course is about. We're going to go into the questions and answers in a few moments. So I'll start to look at some of the comments that you have, and I'm happy to answer anything, whether it's off topic or not. I should mention that when people have completed the 9th module, and the first students will actually complete that next week, we'll issue a certificate. I actually have to design that certificate today, and it'll basically be a certificate of completion. At the end of each module, there's a short quiz. It's really just to make sure that people are paying attention. It's not to try to catch people out. I just didn't want people to do the masterclass, go off, make a cup of coffee, come back when it's finished, and pick up their certificates. At least the quiz shows that people have paid attention. So there'll be a certificate of completion endorsed by Hill Dickinson, HFW, Michael Moore, Equium. I'm also in discussions at the moment with another very significant entity in yachting who are very interested in endorsing the course. You have a certificate of completion. But I did mention, and the other thing I wanted to add is that I'm constantly adding information and reading material to the Yacht Broker Masterclass website too. I want it to become a source, a valuable source for new yacht brokers. You'll have lifetime access to the course. So when you sell your first yacht, if it's a MEBA contract, you can go back to the MEBA contract module. You'll probably need to do that 6 or 7 times as the sales progress. EBA contract the same. If a question comes to you, I'm always there to try to answer it for you. If for example, a new article comes out that I think will be benefit to students, I upload that to the course. So it's a constantly evolving and growing source of information. We also just started an internal Facebook page so that students can communicate with each other and exchange their own ideas, their own questions. And I'm a part of that too, to be able to answer any questions that I possibly can. And when I can't answer them, I can usually find somebody who can. The course itself is $4,450. There's an easy installment option as well on the website. And in the description to this video, you'll see both a 10% discount code that you can use and also a link to the actual website itself. But I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar that I also have a new partner, which will make it a lot easier for you to get into the yacht brokerage industry. And this was always a worry to me as I was developing the masterclass, and it took me about a year actually to put everything all together. It worried me that students may finish the course, get their certificates, and then I kind of go fly and be free, and the student may completely collapse. They don't know what the next step is. So I was really happy when I was contacted by a company called Shoreside Super Yacht Recruitment, who, as far as I know, are the only recruitment agency in yachting that finds work for yacht brokers. And when they came to me with this suggestion of doing a partnership, I said, yeah, but surely you're only looking for experienced yacht brokers. And they said, no, actually there are brokerage companies out there that do want enthusiastic new recruits. And if they know that they're enthusiastic enough to have taken a course, completed it, they've got their certificates, then there is work out there. Of course, I can't guarantee anything for anybody, but what I can do is give you all of the tools that you need and then put you in contact with a company that can actually potentially find work for you. On top of that, whenever I hear of yacht brokerage companies looking for yacht brokers, I'm going to be putting that onto the masterclass too, again, to help you. That's the intention. So don't forget, discount code is in the description below, along with a link to the actual Yacht Broker Masterclass itself. I'm looking now at some of the comments. Hendrik Sprit from Yacht and Product Design says, what is nowadays still the biggest challenge as a yacht broker, despite your experience? Yeah, the biggest challenge is something I've discussed at length in the masterclass and also in these webinars. It is using your time wisely. There are so many time wasters, and it surprises me over and over again how many experienced yacht brokers will spend considerable amounts of time with somebody who they've never even qualified. Yeah, I'm talking about brokers I know who have more experience than me, people who were already yacht brokers when I became a yacht broker in 2006. And I've had instances where I've had inquiries from people, and within a relatively short amount of time, it's been clear that they don't have the money to buy the yacht. They just don't. And I've become, over time, quite ruthless in my approach to people in this regard. And it constantly surprises me that some yacht brokers haven't learnt their lesson, and they will spend money and time pursuing somebody and just basically satisfying that person's flight of fantasy who wants to pretend to buy a yacht. Now, I don't know every single person on this webinar. Some of you may be really shocked by that. But take it from me, I've been in the industry a long time. It is shocking how many people will contact you pretending to buy a yacht where they just don't have the money to do it. They're just enjoying the process. And some people are actually quite literally deluded. I've dealt with people who've made 3, 4, 5 million, and which is exciting, right? You make 3, 4, 5 million and it changes your life. It's fantastic money. But then that becomes a delusion that they can buy a yacht that's worth 20 million, which of course they can't. They're not poor people by any stretch of the imagination, but they're not in the league of buying a super yacht. And those are the people you really need to be aware of, to not waste time with them. You have to be quite quite ruthless with them. So that looks like that's the end of the questions and answers. I want to thank everybody for attending. I'm really enjoying this webinar. I'm enjoying the course. I'm enjoying the feedback that I'm getting from people on the course. And I'm particularly pleased with the feedback that so far has been very positive. People feel that it's been well worth their while doing it. One of the students last week said that when she finishes the course, she'd like to give me a review on things that could be even improved. And I'm really looking forward to that as well, because I will act on the suggestions that I get to make this a constantly growing resource for anybody who wants to be a yacht broker. Quick one, Patrick says, I have over 20 yachts on offer, but I don't get any inquiries. I use platforms and social media, but I only get 2 to 3 inquiries per month. 50% of them are shady guys. Any suggestions? The shady guys, suggestions for the shady guys is quite simple. Here's the thing. Whatever you do to promote your yachts, you will always get 50% of shady guys, right? It's going to happen because the internet is available to everybody, and the internet is the single most useful resource in marketing anything right now. You can imagine with my YouTube channel, and when we get close to 1 million views a month on YouTube, you can imagine how many shady guys I get there. But I would rather have 50 inquiries a month coming in, of which 25 are shady, rather than 5 inquiries a month, of which 50% are still shady. At least I'm left with a decent amount. And by the way, we'll come to the other part of your question too, about generating inquiries. But my point is that there was I don't know if you've ever heard of Gary Vaynerchuk. Gary Vaynerchuk's a very successful social media influencer and has a company called VaynerMedia, who I think they have like 800 employees. And a lot of the Super Bowl ads that you see are created by VaynerMedia. So a very, very successful guy. And I saw an interview with him once, and somebody said, look, you have 800 employees. How do you become so good at hiring people? Because, you know, it's difficult, isn't it, to find the right people to work for you. And he laughed and he said, I'm not good at hiring people at all. I make a lot of mistakes. I'm not good at hiring people. I'm very good at firing people. I don't waste time. If it's not working out, I fire them and I get somebody else on. You need to be very similar with the inquiries that you have. There's nothing you can do. Just like it's very difficult to always get the right person to work for you, it's also impossible to always get qualified inquiries. What you need to do is get rid of them and make it clear to them that you won't be answering the moment you're absolutely sure that they're wasting your time. And I go into that in some detail in the masterclass, so I won't go into any more detail here, but yeah, be ruthless about it, Patrick. With regard to generating inquiries, without knowing your circumstances, it's difficult to know what to suggest, except for this. If you're associated with a large brokerage firm, then you should get more inquiries, because a good, reputable, large brokerage firm will be investing probably millions. I know that Northrop & Johnson do invest millions. Budget for marketing is huge because we have that responsibility to our clients to get their yachts sold. I'm not saying that Northrop & Johnson or Campers or Frasers or any of those big names, I'm not saying that the inquiries will come falling down from heaven to you. It's not that good, but you will get more than 2 or 3 a month for sure. You say that you're using platforms, social media. I mean, Yacht World brings in usually a few inquiries. Super Yacht Times brings in, but they're all, as you know, you have to pay for all of those. What I've seen of most of the most successful yacht brokers is they spend a lot of time networking with other yacht brokers. I don't know where you live, Patrick, but certainly in the south of France, there's a lot of networking goes on between other yacht brokers, and networking is literally going out for lunch with them, going out for dinner, going out for drinks, attending occasions, talking to them, building relationships with them so that they know what you've got for sale. You want to be the first person that they think of when they have a client that's looking for a boat. I don't know how long you've been doing this, Patrick, but it does take time. There's no easy way to make money. It all takes time. It all takes effort. But keep doing what you're doing with social media. If you want to, drop me a direct message either on Instagram or you can email me at david@yachtsforsaleblog.com. david@yachtsforsaleblog.com. I'll be happy to take a look at what you're doing at the moment and offer any advice that I can. But without actually seeing what you're doing, it's difficult to give you any valuable advice. You say you've been doing it for 7 months. When I first became a yacht broker, I was told by a very experienced broker, prepare to make no money at all for your first 2 years. Now, as it turned out, I sold some yachts well before that. But his opinion was that you should be prepared for it to take 2 years. Actually, I don't know where I've heard this, but there's a statistic that it takes 3 years to build up a business to the point of it being profitable. And although these days most young brokers that I meet are able to become successful earlier than that, I think it probably does take 3 years for you to find your rhythm, to build up a really good database of yachts for sale, to build up a really good database of buyers as well, to the point that I don't think you're ever really comfortable as a yacht broker. You need to always be hungry and always looking, because otherwise people forget you very quickly. But it probably does take 3 years to really get to that point that you've got a good rhythm going with good business coming in all the time. So 7 months, don't get discouraged, Patrick. Keep doing what you're doing, and do feel free to send me an email. And if I can give you any more practical advice, email me with sort of specifics of what the yachts that you've got are, where they are at the moment, if they're on Yacht World, what your social media profile is. I'll do what I can to help you. Thank you once again, everybody. That's been an absolute blast of a masterclass. Thoroughly enjoyed it. And don't forget to check out the actual masterclass itself at yachtbrokermasterclass.com. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.